Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to this Wednesday webinar, where today we will have Simon from OSCE presenting the results of the feasibility study that they did on introducing EVs into the OSCE fleet. I hope you can give me a heads up whether you can hear me, if I'm loud and clear. Please use the chat to introduce yourself, because that's always nice to see who is there. So, as you might see, at the moment, I'm the only one there. We have a slight technical problem. I will introduce Simon now as our presenter. And that will also allow us. There we go. There he is. Hi, Simon. You're on mute. I hope you can hear me. And you're very far away. Simon, you're on mute. So if you can unmute yourself, that would be great. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, that I know. We we cannot hear Simon, so we are waiting for Simon to come in. But I'm happy to hear that at least you can hear me loud and clear. Um, so while we are waiting for Simon to solve this slight technical issue and pull up his slides, so the usual with our webinars is going to happen, but for those of you who are here for the first time, Simon will present for about 20 minutes, and then after that we will have a Q&A. We also have on our call and sort of in the webinar, we also have Cyril from Fleet Forum, who has been working actively on this project. So if there are any questions that maybe Simon cannot answer, then we can always pull in Cyril and make him a presenter as well, to ask the sort of more the project questions or how we came to the conclusions and stuff like that. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, feel free throughout the presentation to use the chat, and then we will pick them up at the end of the we will pick them up at the end of the webinar. So I see that Simon is back in. It's always so nice if we have technical problems. And now you see how I need to improvise sort of to talk, and to talk. And now I see Simon. Simon, you're still on mute. If you can unmute yourself. Simon cannot unmute. Okay, let's see if I can. Let's see what is. And you will see, you will notice, like we normally within Fleet Forum, we always do dry runs for these type of webinars, right? So on Monday, Simon and I did the dry run and everything worked flawless. And you always know then, okay, so then during the actual event, then things start to happen, and we do have technical issues. Let's see, Simon, maybe if you in the chat then at least can let us know if it is feasible. Well, if you think you can sort of solve it. Otherwise, we're gonna move to plan B. Because we have also Nikita here, and she's already offering to present on behalf of Simon. Simon, would that be while you are trying to figure it out? I think I saw some thumbs up. Okay, so I will make Nikita a presenter. This is how we, and then let's see if she can unmute herself and turn on the camera.
Yeah, are you able to hear me now?
You're on mute.
Yeah, I know because we're listening, so I can keep one of the audios on.
Okay.
Colleagues, can you just let us know in the chat if you're able to hear us? Both of us, Rose and myself.
Yes. We're here.
It's a live colleague, the small joys. Okay, so first of all, I can already tell you Simon is super bummed that he cannot present because he prepared an epic presentation for y'all. But let me start sharing my screen and walking you through. And Simon, in case you are not able to, if you are able to join, feel free to step in when you can. If not, please go ahead and post whatever you like in the chat as and when, and I will do my best to represent your voice in this. Let's go. So OSCE, OSCE Contracted Fleet Forum. I think we already have some colleagues also who have participated in our previous project around electric vehicles in the Middle East and Africa. I think I saw Frederick on the line, or some of our colleagues from WHO as well. There were many more colleagues as well. We have previously conducted a study around this for a number of countries in the Middle East and in Africa. And we produced a lot of guidance documents together with the organizations who participated in this, and also with Cyril. And what occurred was OSCE is looking broadly at how sustainability fits in, especially in terms of fleet management. And so we were contracted on behalf of OSCE, and Simon led the project to do a financial and environmental feasibility assessment in terms of introducing hybrid and electric vehicles in the context of OSCE. Now, keep in mind this: the context of OSCE, I would say, is quite different from the first study in that the mission. There are a number of different missions in the organization, and for the purpose of this study, we looked at Tajikistan, Kosovo, and North Macedonia. Now, while you might say, Nikita, but I don't have many operations over there, so is this still interesting for me? I promise you, yes, and you will see why in a bit. So maybe a little bit about OSCE. This is the part I might flounder a little bit, Simon. You would definitely have been able to do this part better. But in a nutshell, it's a very impressive organization, maybe a little bit different from what other fleet forum, slightly different in its mission in terms of what other fleet forum members are doing. They're very much focused on peace and security in the region where it's operating. So a lot of their staff have different like activities in terms of moving around, monitoring, and they've got a fleet of roughly 400 vehicles. Some of these are armored vehicles, yes, but also they've got like some missions with a very small fleet. Some of them also with a larger fleet, like Kosovo. And they are using fleet management systems, specifically from Chevron, and also vehicle tracking. So this is quite important actually, because I must say, many times we tell some of our member organizations, please improve your data. We did not have to say that to OSCE. There was really good quality data to work from. A tender was launched in mid 2023, and we Fleet Forum responded to the tender. And the components what OSCE was requesting was, please do an analysis of three of the countries. Look at first the car categories, the total cost, the utilization, and the patterns around it, and also do a TCO analysis, but also do an environmental life cycle analysis, LCA. And what here we had some good news and we had some less so good news. What's interesting about this is we looked at hybrid vehicles as well, which to my recollection we had not done in the first study that we conducted. It was not easy to get LCA data. If there are any vehicle manufacturers on the line, please help us in future studies. It's really it's a bit tricky to get access to this data, but we worked with our partners at Cord, and used the data that we had from the previous study, looking at also publicly available researches that have been conducted since then, and then extrapolated the data. And over the course of, yeah, since mid 2023 until the beginning of this year, there was a whole process we went to in terms of observing the trends in OSCE's fleet in these three countries, gathering the data, doing the analysis, and publishing the results and recommendations report. So, what are some of the results that we see? I preempted some of them. OSCE has pretty good data, and compliments to the fleet staff who are working on the different missions on this. It's not getting good quality data is not a one-off exercise, right? It's something you have to do. I know many of you on the line, you are well aware of this. It's something you have to really put into practice and make it your weekly, your monthly habit in your organization to continue accessing good quality data. When we analyzed OSCE's data, what we saw is that the fleet is very underutilized. So what you're seeing on the screen, right? Journey is quite short, from 12 to 46 kilometers on average. And so what was interesting to see is that sometimes you might think, oh, maybe the same countries that are sharing borders or that are in the same region, electrification would be good for all the different countries in that region. And like Simon is pointing out to you on the slide, actually each country, the operational profile and the context produced a very different answer. So this is quite something interesting. We're going to tell you some more about this as well. And what we observed is that this, if for OSCE, because the missions are so short, normally when we're looking at the feasibility of electric vehicles, purely from an operational perspective, you have to think, where can I access charging on the route, right? And how often would I need to charge? In the case of OSCE, the beauty of having short missions as well is that you can consider one alternative forms of mobility. So really, if you've attended fleet forum webinars before, you know we actively champion the ASI framework, the Avoid, Shift, Improve framework. And so there is a lot of opportunity as well in OSCE to look at the avoid and shift pillar in their overall environmental sustainable fleet approach. But also, when looking at electric vehicles specifically, I'm talking purely from an operational perspective. We're going to get into the cost and the environment, but purely what's feasible from an operations perspective is for OSCE, small battery electric vehicles would be the ones of most benefit. They do not need to install chargers on the way. The fact that the trips are short in nature would allow to easily charge them on its own premises. And multiple charges per day or something like that would not be required. And then what you're seeing on the table is we also did a context analysis. So here we looked at a number of different factors related to the external environment in the country. And I'll sum it up quickly in four areas. One was, what are the local policies in terms of electrification? What is how is the infrastructure development going? Are there any country-specific policies on this? For example, all fleets need to be electric by this date. That's what we mean by local policies. Then we looked at local incentives. Do you get our electric vehicles? Do you get incentives like discounts when you buy the vehicle? Is the government subsidizing the purchase of electric vehicles to promote organizations of implementing it? So we looked at fiscal incentives, import and the removal of duty as well. We looked at the local power grid. So is it what we call a clean or a dirty grid? Is the grid being sourced through renewable energy? or through fossil fuels. That's what we mean by the local power grid. And then we looked at like the after sales support. So are there distributors in the country? Where are the nearest production sites? So on this basis, in consultation with the colleagues in OSCE, we did an analysis of the context. Now, colleagues, I explain this very carefully and slowly because we also encourage you that if you are looking at electric vehicles for your own context, you could use the same grid and then do your research. Please keep in mind the situation is constantly evolving when it comes to electric vehicles as well. So today, what you might research might change in 3 months, 6 months, a year from now. But still, it's important to understand this when developing your thoughts on, okay, should I invest in electric vehicles, yes or no? And what we're seeing here is that for Tajikistan, it looked very promising. For North Macedonia, uh, and for Kosovo, there are some specific parts where we thought, okay, this is really not so interesting. So what you will see is that indeed, if we move to the next slide, now I'm going to show you what we looked at together with the colleagues in terms of the TCO analysis. So what you're seeing on the screen is we collected data over an extensive period of time. The colleagues have been inputting all the data in the fleet management system related to the cost of the vehicles, from the purchase to the operating costs, also the disposal cost of previous vehicles. So they shared this data with us, and we were able to then do a TCO analysis and we made an assumption around the vehicles being optimally used. So we said, okay, if they are driving 100 kilometers daily, what would be the TCO per kilometer? And if we look here also, you see that in Kosovo, and please keep in mind, we compared vehicles for some of them are smaller vehicles, some of them are larger vehicles. So you need to take that into context when looking at this graph. But what we saw is that in Kosovo, smaller ICE vehicles are contributing to lower costs. So although hybrid vehicles are available for use there, it is actually the smaller ICE vehicles that are more cost efficient. For North Macedonia, there we saw that hybrid and electric vehicles are also viable from an economic perspective. And then lastly, for Tajikistan, this is also some interesting dynamic. Simon, I'm really missing you in this call, I must say. Simon and the team did their best because we started the project first. The first few months, we looked at what was operationally feasible. But then, of course, as the good logisticians and fleet managers that you are, we have to deal with the reality, which is okay. Nice that we need to test vehicles, but where do we get the vehicles? Colleagues in these three missions tried to explore different strategies to access these vehicles, even looking at rental options. And in Kosovo, we managed to look at hybrid vehicles. In North Macedonia, we looked at hybrid and electric vehicles. In Tajikistan, we were not able to in the end. But still, what we did is we simulated it, meaning the colleagues looked at, okay, what are the costs of this in my country? And together with our research partner, we looked at what are the environmental what is possible. We made some assumptions around what the environmental impact would be considering the grid in Tajikistan. But here, the important thing we want to emphasize is that in Tajikistan, electric and hybrid vehicles also seem to be very relevant, even though it was based on simulated data. So, and like I mentioned earlier, the assumption here is that each model is right profile to a specific and optimal usage. This is not their current TCO. This is the TCO based on the usage of 100 kilometers per day. And Simon, am I hearing you?
I think
Testing,
Can
testing.
you say something?
yes.
Can you believe I'm now on my private phone? I've tried 4 different devices and I'm speaking to you on my private phone. I'm really sorry. I don't know what's happened. We did test it and it worked. But anyway, Nikita's doing a fantastic job. Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. So if you can hear me well, we're still on the slide TCO, and I think it's important just to recognise this is the theoretical value calculated had all of these vehicles been driving 100 kilometres per day. As we showed on a previous slide, this is not the case in the missions that were part of the study, more like 12 to 46. So there is another chart, which I chose not to show in public, but where our costs are a little higher, of course, because we're not driving 100 kilometers per day. And Nikita's mentioned data a couple of times. When we went through this exercise, it wasn't just, here's the data, tell us what the results are. We iterated it, we discussed it, we cleansed it, we gave some observations that were then factored in, and this is there is theoretical result, but also there is the realistic result, which was an extremely useful fringe benefit to the OSCE as part of the study. So we can go to the next slide, I think, looking at the time. And here we can see we're looking at North Macedonia. We mentioned that they were using mainly hybrid electric vehicles, so about 50% of the fleet, and they are shown as the of the three vehicles compared, the best cost model. That's the sort of greenish line. The Nissan diesel Qashqai is the black line, and that's not by any means the optimum financial vehicle, and it would need an electric vehicle to drive between 150 and 175,000 kilometers before it breaks even. So there's a conclusion that we can draw from there. I know we've said before that EVs are at their best when they're driving a lot. Next slide, please. And this is where we've put together the life cycle assessment together with the costs. And this was really important to us, and Nikita mentioned it at the beginning of the presentation, that we had both. Because regardless of the environmental benefits, were it not to be financially advantageous, we probably couldn't get management approval to go forward. The way of looking at this is if you have the narrowest waist, so the smallest chart above and below the line, you would have environmentally and financially the best vehicle. But of course, it has to be able to do the job. So an IGO can't do everything, nor can the other vehicles. So you have to factor this in against what it is that you're trying to do. But the general conclusion, of course, is smaller, lighter vehicles, regardless of the engine type, are likely to be better financially and environmentally. No surprises there. But it also introduces the benefits of rejuvenating the fleet, because then you've got access to more economical vehicles generally and newer technologies. And one important point just to mention with the financial side here, this chart suggests that a diesel Skoda Octavia is cheaper to run than an IGO. It's not quite the case, because we bought the Octavias 6 years ago when prices of Octavias were low, and we bought the IGOs 2 years ago. So this is where knowledge of your fleet and knowledge of financial implications needs to be applied to the raw data to make the right interpretations. Next slide. You get a chance, I think, to read this in more detail when you get the presentation afterwards. But we hadn't originally intended to do a staff survey, but we did. There were about 20 questions or so, 25, aimed at drivers, managers, and passengers. Overwhelmingly positive feedback, of course, not universal. And most respondents came from North Macedonia, where there were 2 EVs already operating during this study. But I think it was very reassuring and encouraging that we got such good feedback of that. And we can come to the concluding slide very quickly to hopefully allow a little bit of time for questions. So the top section of bullets is what you might say is very obvious conclusions, and it's something we could have been doing regardless of the study, but this just reminded us of the basics of fleet management, that we need to make sure we're buying the right vehicles, using them in the optimal way, and also ensuring that we're maximizing the assets through high utilization. The mindset, though, of mobility management versus vehicle fleet ownership or management is a harder nut to crack. I think that's going to take longer for the obvious reasons. But as a result of the study, what we want to try and do is to bring this to a higher level of management attention. The report will go out to all of our missions and all of our transport community to help educate them and give them some food for thought about how they approach their daily tasks. We will select some other missions. Now we've got a good methodology provided by the Study by Fleet Forum, and repeat the data analysis and the local contextual analysis to see about the feasibility, the traffic lights for other missions. And we still intend, if we can find the money, to buy a small number of EVs for those missions where it seems suitable, to give them the experience. And I think this is a valuable lesson that we took away. Having an EV just changes people's opinions, and it gives them a little bit of a better appreciation of what these technologies can do. And I wasn't paid to add the final bullet at the bottom, but it's been a real pleasure working with Cyril, Nikita, and Teresa for all this time, nearly a year and a half. I think they did a great job, and we've come a long way, and we've got some really useful information and recommendations to move forward with. So, and I'll add an extra thanks to Nikita for jumping in at the last minute for this presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Simon, and well, thanks Nikita, and also in the background, thanks Cyril for already starting to answer some of the questions that, well, the question that was posted in the chat or in the Q&A section on how we dealt with the in the calculations the margin of error related to variations on the cost of fossil fuel. And Cyril answered there that in the project we have used the real cost of fuel based on the OSCE data extracted for a period of 1 year. We have some time left, so if there's any other questions, comments, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A section.
And Rose, while people are thinking about that, just a further observation that Nikita touched on a little bit. Of course, we looked at the situation today, and we tried to get some understanding of what was coming in the future in terms of legislation, infrastructure investments, and so on. That's quite hard. It's very hard to get life cycle assessment data. We failed there, although we did try to collectively. Very hard, but it's also not easy in each of these countries to understand the legislation, even though we've got a presence there. And today's legislation and planned legislation, to really get a proper contextual understanding, and looking ahead a few years, 5-6 years on that time horizon, the life of a car, let's say, I think it's important to really think about that.
Thanks, Simon, for that. We actually have a question from Gerard, one of your former colleagues at OSCE. He was not able to post his message in the chat, so he was texting me in the background. But I just put it in the chat, and his question is: when talking about education of the transport community, did you also consider that you need to adequately discipline drivers about effectively and efficiently charging your EVs?
Well, there's only 2 EVs in the OSCE now, Gerard, and hi again, by the way, nice to hear from you. You made me suddenly very nervous when I saw your name on the list of attendees. And they really had to develop this from scratch, and it's been a great lessons identified and learned how you change from buying fuel at the petrol station and dealing with those receipts versus finding somewhere to charge and calculating the electricity used. Yes, we do. The range of the 2 vehicles in use, best case is 400 kilometers. In North Macedonia, you can exhaust that in one journey on a long day. So they have domestic charging at their premises, and to date, I'm not aware of them having run out of charge whilst on a journey. So it seems to be going okay.
Okay, thanks. There's a question in the Q&A from Dimitrios from WFP. So how difficult is it to get resale values to calculate the total cost of ownership? Any insights when comparing particular models?
Yeah, I think, and Cyril might add to this, we gave the information on vehicles disposed of by sale from these 3 missions over a period of time. And we had to take that as a a point to work from. Of course, the prediction of sales is a demand and supply thing. So what you've got last year might not necessarily indicate what you get next year. So like all these things, there's a certain amount of assumptions built into the final calculations. And it is a very difficult exercise to think about all the different models we've got and in all the different countries, the 15, 16 locations that we've got, because you can sell a model in one country for a good price and you'll get a lot less in another, partly because of the import tariffs that the buyer might need to pay in one country but not need to pay in another country.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Simon. And Cyril is also adding to that in the chat, well, basically stating the same, and also pointing out that simulations were used, right, to calculate the resale value or to estimate the resale value over a period of 6 years. So yeah. Let's see if there's more questions either in the chat or. I don't see any more, so I think that means a job well done. Simon, Nikita, and Cyril. This is really like a team effort. No, so but yeah, it was really a pleasure, Simon, to hear about the project and also to look at how OSCE approached this. I think that's really cool. I hope to all the other participants on the call that it's served as also an inspiration how you could go about it in your own organization, and really look forward to to hear from you, but also to see you in our next webinar. And before we close, on the chat, Gerard, and that must make you happy, Simon, is sending a message saying, again, my compliments for this thorough study. So that is from
Thanks,
Gerard. Okay, for now, I wish everyone, well, a lovely continuation of the day. Hope to see you in our next webinar, and stay in touch. Bye-bye.